All right, good evening. This is the meeting of the Community Preservation Committee, noticed pursuant to the applicable law for January 25th, 2023, beginning at 5:30 p.m. This meeting is being held in a hybrid format. Some of our members are logging in through Zoom. Members of the public can participate by logging in by Zoom, and the Zoom address is available on the notice of the meeting. So before I begin, I want to make sure that we are all present, and I'll use this tech check to take roll. Okay, so I'll call your name, respond in the affirmative, and Joe Barnes. Let's start with Joe Barnes. Joe. He's not present yet. Okay, no. He's working on logging in. Right, we sent him his.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Bob Dermody. Here. Laura Dorfman.
Here.
Okay, Reg Foster. I think I just sent Reg a text. I'm not sure what his status is. Dina Hannigan.
Here.
Dave Herrer. Here. Jean McKnight.
Here.
Rick Zambone.
Here.
And this is the chair, Peter Pingator, present. Our staff, Cecilia Simchak.
Here.
Okay. All right, as I stated, this meeting is by hybrid format. It is being held as an open meeting pursuant to former Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. And as I also stated, you can get the address to participate on members of the public by getting the Zoom app on our notice of our hearing. Meeting materials have been provided to our members, and the ground rules are the same. Participants will have one presentation tonight. I'll introduce the speaker. At the conclusion of the speaker's presentation, we'll go in alphabetical order and ask each of you if you have comments or questions. And then what I just want to make sure is that we have a clean record so that whoever is speaking, it's on the record and it's very clear who it is. So either I'll identify you, you can identify yourself. Use the hand up function on Zoom, or wave, or sometimes just wave your hand, because sometimes I miss it. And if I can't figure out who raised their hand first, sometimes I inadvertently call on the wrong person. So I just want to apologize from the get-go. Members of the public may have questions. This is a meeting of the committee. It's not a public hearing, so we're not going to take your questions tonight. But I would invite you to email any questions to our staff, Cecilia Simchak. She can get those to us and provide you with the information. Okay, so let's go to
Joe. Made it on.
Is Joe Barnes is on? Okay, Joe, you're here.
I'm back. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're just missing Reg, and I sent him a text. And he is trying to rejoin now. And
Yes, there he is.
is he on? Okay, Reg Foster.
My apologies for being late.
Do not apologize. It's fine. We just got started. Okay. So chairman's updates, I'll just be brief, and this is related to the Claxton Field. Made a determination to push back the presentation on Claxton Field by Park and Rec until March 1st, which is the meeting immediately preceding our meeting where we discuss and prepare for our public hearing. So we have time to hear and listen and have a discussion, and then go into our public hearing on the request. The reason for the request pushback is that Park and Rec, the town, is in discussions with both the designer and DEP regarding the scope of the project. And so we should have some additional information in the coming weeks. One thing that I want to, I think this is probably going to be a Rick Zambone question, and I'm going to head it off, which is I would continue to slot in the request being the same, $1 million. Okay, so let's just continue with that in terms of putting together our financial projections. Okay, with that, as we get more information, more definitive information, we'll provide it to you. And that's our update, and that's probably the update for Claxton Field under applications. So tonight, let's see, first of all, any questions or comments from anyone regarding that, the chairman's updates? Satisfied? Thank you. Okay, tonight we have our first presentation for FY 2024 applications, and it is for the DeFazio Playground renovation. I believe this is the design component. I don't have the application in front of me. And Stacy Mulroy is here, who is our director of Park and Rec. Shall we make a presentation? Your materials should include the slides. You can follow along on your computer if you have it. I think what we'll do is we'll put it up on the screen as well. So let me have Stacy Mulroy, let's call her to the head of the class.
Usually I'm in the back row, so thank you, Peter. Hi, thank you all for inviting me tonight. My name is Stacy Miller. I'm the Director of Park and Recreation for the town of Needham. Cecilia, do I have the ability to share screen?
I can. Now you do.
Okay. So I'm just going to jump into the slides for the project. I will go through them, and at the end we'll have time for any questions or comments. All right, is everybody seeing the DeFazio Playground project?
Yes.
Perfect.
Cecilia, will we have the opportunity to have this later?
Yes, I sent it out earlier today. Yeah.
So, Peter, you are right. We are asking for design funding for the DeFazio Playground project located at the DeFazio complex. One of the things I just wanted to go over up front is our playground strategies. We have 18 playgrounds in the town of Needham. And as many of you know, in 2021, we did a playground assessment done by Nancy White, and she identified our playgrounds and put them into the good, the bad, the ugly, I like to say, kind of categories. So we have a priority list of the playgrounds that we need to look at first. So our first strategy is to identify, using the assessment as a guide. We will identify the next playground up for renovation or replacement based on the most efficiency and any safety concerns. Next will be to improve. In addition to the general improvements, all future playgrounds will include PIP surfacing. PIP stands for poured in place. It's that rubberized surfacing that we now have at Greens and at Sonita and partially at Mitchell. And other ADA and MAAB requirements. That's the Mass Architectural Board has further requirements include that more than ADA does for playgrounds. And lastly, moving forward with all of our projects, we are committed to preparing a maintenance plan for all of our playgrounds and other facilities. These will include high and low frequency inspections, assessments, and audits when applicable. The project. So the average life of a playground is about 15 to 20 years old. The DeFazio Playground was originally built in the late 60s, early 70s. The first major renovation was in 1992, and over the past 20 years, there's been numerous upgrades by the town and significant help from the Exchange Club. The current playground that you see at DeFazio is around 26 years old. Again, so that we are well past the prime of this playground. The next few slides are going to show some pictures. And can you see my pointer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So these are footholds that should have much more surfacing coverage. This balance beam should only be about 6 inches off the ground. And while it's kind of hard to see in the distance, you can see the rot from the Rainbow House. One of the zebra springer is actually out of order right now because it's very loose. This block thing in the back is from 1992. It is phenomenal that it is still in place. And again, if you can look at the bottom of the slides, there's a post. That slide should be about 6 to 8 inches off the surfacing. And if you look at the slide here, we just put in a replacement because the top of the slide with the little bump had a hole about this big right in the center of it. So we did just replace that for safety reasons. Just more pictures from, in these pictures, you can also see the fencing concerns we have. It's just that fence has probably been there over 50 years at least. This is just a few examples of some of the modern features that we would be considering. This is by no means what we are definitely putting in. This is just an example. So we have a climber, a small play structure. These components that you see in front of you are based for ages 2 to 5. And this is a spring rocker, sort of like a seesaw, but meant for ages 2 to 5. So it actually just bounces back and forth. Actually, that's, and this is one of the sensory spinners. We have one of these at Greens. All right, planning and budget cycle. So stage 1 was this summer. We identified the next playground up for renovation or replacement. Stage 2, we did submit. So we're sort of at the end of stage 2. Stage 3 would happen in spring 2023. If awarded, we would post the design bid documents. Stage 4, we would award the design company. And then early fall, sort of late summer, we would work with the designers on project scope, designing, and costs. And then late fall, we would choose the final design and then use that design to apply for construction funding for the next budget cycle. So right now we're asking for $35,000 for design funds. And then as far as construction, there's the low end of the estimated budget, which is about $200,000, and the higher end at $400,000. The truth of all playgrounds is you can spend gobs and gobs of money, but we think for this particular site and this age of kids that we're going to stick within the 200 to 400 range for this particular playground. Any questions? I'm happy to go back to any slides if anyone has any questions on them.
So can we take down the slide so we can see you, Stacy?
Absolutely. Here you go.
And then, so why don't we just to let you, I guess the committee is probably aware of the fact that we did serve due diligence questions and the answers are not due until February 1st. So we're going to get some additional information. Pretty detailed information.
Yes.
But still, I think Stacy's here. We kind of we're experienced enough to know generally what our kind of questions are. So let's, with that in mind, let's take advantage of the resource that we have. So why don't we go around and I'll call your name. You can pass, but I just want to give everyone an opportunity to ask a question. Okay, so let's start by going alphabetical order. Joe Barnes, any questions?
Yes, nice presentation. Thank you, Stacy. Will the new Tot Lot be designed in a similar way to anything we've seen already? Is there another Tot Lot that would be comparable to it?
There will be pieces at Greens that would be somewhat comparable, but currently DeFazio is the only specific Tot Lot. So most of our playgrounds have various ages from 2 to 5 elements and 5 to 12 elements. This Tot Lot will be designed specifically for 2 to 5 kids only in mind.
Okay, so I'm most familiar with the Newman Playground, and that's got some great features that seem to address some of the older kids, but the Tot Lot then it's not going to venture beyond probably the 5-year-old or 6-year-old. Is that correct?
That is not our plan currently, yes.
Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
DeFazio is also the only Tot Lot or an only option aside from Perry that's not attached to a school with younger elements.
Okay, Bob Dermody?
Yeah, hi Stacy, thanks.
Sure.
I'm looking at an image of it on Google Maps right now. What about the natural features? Is anything gonna be done with the grass, the trees, the shrubs, anything like that?
So my thoughts are, and we're going to obviously look at this with the designers and the architects because they do this much more often than I do. But if you're standing in the parking lot looking at DeFazio and Asa Field is on your right, we're going to move the playground proper to the top right corner, and leave the rest of it as sort of an open space, natural, those kinds of things. So we'll like right now, the playground pieces are very spread apart all over that space, but we're going to move it to the top right. For the port and place, the port and place is always the most expensive part of the playground, so that will help shrink that cost. And it moves us further away from the wetlands, which is on the left side of that area.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Are we gonna gain or lose any trees?
I don't think so.
So
From the
I
area
hope-
that I'm looking at,
Yeah.
our plan is to keep all the shade in place because certainly that helps with all of our playground pieces and it helps reduce the need for adding shade, which increases the costs.
Yeah, because there seem to be some decent trees in there right now.
Yeah, my idea would be to move around them, even if we, even if it's not an exact rectangle or square, we'll just move around the trees, much like we did at Greens.
Okay, and then lastly, you did mention the fence. Is that gonna be replaced?
We're gonna include that in the design to see if it makes sense to replace it. I think it's certainly a need of replacement. So we're gonna factor it into the design and then decide if it will be part of this project or another project.
Okay.
Because the cost could outweigh this particular project.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, Laura Dorfman?
Hey, Stacy, thank you.
Sure.
Just in general, you said there were 18 playgrounds and you said they were in varying states. I think you called them the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I do, yes.
Can you just give us a sense of within the next 5 years or so, how many are on the really ugly list and just a sense of the dollars that, you might be looking for in the next 5-year period?
Sure. So the way our capital plan is mapped out is in one fiscal year, we go for design and then the second we go for construction. And then it rotates. So it continues the pattern. The next playground that the commission has deemed sort of next in line is Perry Park. After that, it goes between Mills and Cricket. So those would be the two that we would look at as we get closer. Perry Park would be a higher price tag, and I think what I have in my out years is around 400 to 600 for those next two playgrounds for construction costs. Design would be still around 35 to 45 for each of the odd years.
Laura, any additional questions?
You're muted, Laura, sorry.
Sorry. So you see this as kind of an ongoing thing, design, construction, till as you go along to replace the in order of need, I guess.
Yes, in order of need, safety reasons, things like that. With 18 playgrounds and a lifespan of about 20 to 25 years, 15 to 25 years, it's almost in need every year. Now we're sort of behind the 8 ball at the moment, so we're playing catch up and trying to get them one at a time. As we get further out with the port in place and the better maintenance plans that we'll have in place for all of our playgrounds, that could extend the life of our playgrounds a little bit. So at some point, I'm hoping not to go every other year. But for the next 5 years, certainly we're in that space.
Great. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Okay, Rich Foster?
Hi, Stacy. I guess a couple of questions. One is the sort of 5-year look ahead, not building on Laura's question, not just from the point of view of playgrounds, in the, what was it, the ugly category there? But just, you don't have to answer this tonight, but I'm looking forward to sort of seeing the 5-year look ahead from the point of view of all your responsibilities of the department and the commission. Is there anything out there like a Rosemary Pool or other major thing that is being thought about over the next 5 years?
So there's nothing with the price ticket of Rosemary Pool, certainly in the next 5 years. One of the things in addition to, we have mapped out sort of a 10-year adaptable SIP plan. So I'm certainly happy to share that after this. And the other thing is the Active Recreation Working Group, which is looking at some of our projects that people have come to us or the select board about wanting to add into Needham, and do we have space for them? And if we do, which project goes where? And that committee has started meeting, and we're hoping to have, you know, a sort of final pecking order by the end of April. So that will factor into our CIP plan as well.
So I'm thinking, obviously we have to make a decision by mid-March. So that doesn't quite fit end of April here, but you know, I understand it takes time to do that. So I would be looking forward to sort of a preliminary kind of look at what is at least being considered on that 10-year plan, both from the perspective just in general of informing us, but also obviously from our committee point of view of what you might be looking for CPA funding assistance for, and kind of put this individual project in context. For example, the tennis courts that came up last year. My guess is we may see a return of that particular project once the design of what to do there is figured out here. So that sort of thing. And that we were looking for some very big numbers just for that one project when we talked about it a year ago. So, okay. And my next more micro version of the same question is the 200,000 to 400,000 that you're thinking, you know, is going to be needed once the design is complete and approved. Are you coming back to the CPA funding, you know, source for funding all of that or some of it, or what?
So we would, I believe we'll come back to CPC for some of it. There will be parts of it, like I don't believe the rubber surfacing is eligible for CPC, but the playground renovation, removal, replacement, and some of the pieces are. So it would be some, but not all.
So we'll see you back at December 1, 2023 with probably, you know, things go on schedule with money to some funding assistance to complete the project.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We'll be friends.
Good. Of course. That's it, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks, Reg. Okay, Dina Hannigan, you have questions?
No, I don't. I did, but it was already asked and answered. Good job, Stacy. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Dave Harrer?
Yeah, hi, Stacy. I share some of Bob's concern about the natural environment there, and I know this playground borders on the wetland area. And I'd like to see that gets incorporated into the design, and or perhaps maybe some new plantings be added. Certainly, you know, not taking down any existing features. Or to that end, I kind of felt when I read the initial application that the $35,000 wasn't enough money to do everything, because you probably need to do a wetlands assessment or a flagging, and then you know, in addition to you know, the playground designer, you might be talking to a landscape person, architect or whatever. So, you know, I think you could use some more money, but that's, you know, just my comment.
Yeah, I did reach out to a few of the vendors that we work with that have worked in town. You know, Landscape Structures is one of the playground companies we spend the most time with, and that's where those numbers came from. I think based on the size of the design is where they came up with those numbers. But I'm not saying you're not right.
No more questions.
Thanks, Dave. Jean McKnight.
Yes, I do have a few questions. I took a drive by. I didn't get out of my car, but I just looked at the playground. And if it isn't too miserable tomorrow, Peter Pinketer and I are the liaisons, and we're going to go take a look at it tomorrow morning, right? Or is it
That's correct.
Friday morning?
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Be careful on the zebra.
The zebra. On the zebra.
Not allowed on the zebra.
I'm glad to hear I'll be safe going down the slide.
And I do have a handful of questions, 4 questions, I'd say. First of all, the acronym PIP on surfacing, what does that mean?
It's poured in place. So it's
Poured
the
in
Yep,
place.
it's the rubberized surfacing. So it's a safety surfacing that it holds 2 roles. One, it is 100% ADA accessible, and it's one of the easiest for mobility issues. The other thing is poured in place is extremely important in New England because it's one of the surfaces that doesn't freeze. Our wood chips, our turf, the old playgrounds that we played in that had sand, all of that freezes in the winter. So if a kid falls off a playground, they could get more hurt than if they fall on the rubber.
And
And so
generally, safety, the softness of the material is to keep the children safe.
Yep, there's been a lot of research and a lot of there's a lot of articles. If you want me to send some to you, I can. But the numbers of broken bones and fractures have gone down significantly with the introduction of this surfacing.
I'm familiar with Greensfield. I've been taking my granddaughter there since she was 3, and she's now 8. So I think of that as just a wonderful playground. Does Greensfield have that type of surfacing?
Actually, we just upgraded Greensfield. It previously had some poured in place and some wood fibers. We've removed all of it and replaced it with 100% poured in place.
Okay, and you said that the surfacing might not be eligible for, is that because of the prohibition on turf fields or whatever they're called?
Yes, I'd have to look
artificial-
into that one a little bit more in depth. But my concern is that the surfacing is not because of this. It's the same type of material as turf.
Okay, I understand now, I didn't understand before, that this is a Tot Lot. And the idea is that the play structures will be strictly suitable for the 2 to 5-year-old age. That surprises me in that this is near the middle school. And I guess I thought that they'd be play structures that are suitable for older kids. I mean, Greensfield, those play structures, an older kid can enjoy playing there. I know, middle school kids are more like 12 than 8, but still, it's entirely a Tot Lot. What's the thinking behind that?
It's always been a Tot Lot, and it's one of our few Tot Lots that is only a Tot. It's our few playgrounds that's only it's our only Tot Lot now. With Claxton being removed, it's the only Tot Lot that is specific to 2 to 5. All the rest of our playgrounds have mixed use for both age groups. And playgrounds pieces in general currently only go up to age 12. So while I agree that middle schoolers should definitely have playground pieces, that's sort of the next level of like the fitness equipment that you see out there, and the sort of Ninja Warrior equipment that you see going up near those places, near middle schools.
Okay. I used to be an urban planner employed by the town of Framingham back in the late 70s, early 80s, and I did the town's open space and outdoor recreation plan. And our concept was very much neighborhood centered. Every neighborhood needs a playground and a play field. And I'm beginning to see this particular one as more of a town-wide feature that people would drive there, especially because it's the Tot Lot. Is that concept, or people are taking their older kids to play soccer and they take the little ones over to play in the Tot Lot?
Yeah,
Explain
so it's
how-
a little bit of both.
Who will use it?
So it will be a little bit of both, actually. So during the day, during the week, we see a lot of parents there with young children that they do drive there. Prior to probably about 5 to 10 years ago, the DeFazio Tot Lot was in a lot of mom blogs about what the 10 best playgrounds to go to for 2 to 5. It is no longer on that because of the maintenance issues. So we'd like to bring it back to that level, but it would be, we also see that a lot of parents with older kids at the fields bring their younger kids, like while one kid is practicing, the other one goes over, keeps them busy and distracted.
So, I know there's a sidewalk that leads to it, you know, along, is it Dedham Avenue? On one side of Dedham Avenue, there is a sidewalk. But generally, my observation, I used to live on Norfolk Street and would walk over with older kids who'd be going over to play in the field. But it's not easily accessible from the neighborhood because you can't really safely cross Dedham Avenue, or at least kids can't. So I'm getting just more of a sense that it's not really a neighborhood playground. It's a feature for the town.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, okay. So that takes care of my questions. My last question. It appeared to me that there was not a lot of tree cover. And, you know, when you in a playground in the summer, some shade is really helpful. Are you paying attention to the need for shade cover?
Absolutely. There is some tree shades cover there, but we will also, like a lot of our structures, especially for ages 2 to 5, will have shade structures built in or built on top of them. We always focus on shade, especially for the younger kids, but we do focus on that for all of our playgrounds.
Okay. All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Rick Zimbone.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, and thank you, Stacy. I appreciate your presentation. I got a couple questions, and some of these are kind of different. You said there's 18 playgrounds around town, and you've categorized them into good, bad, and ugly. How many of the 18 are in the ugly category?
4.
And which ones are they?
So DeFazio, Perry, and then Cricket and Mills.
Okay, so out of those 4, if it's going to take 2 years to accomplish all of this on this one playground, and you're coming back one at a time, it's going to be 8 years before we can address totally the 4 that are categorized as ugly. So my question really is why only one? I mean, if we're coming in looking for funds, why not do more than one? And I'd like to understand the thinking in the Park and Rec Commission and your thinking as to why only do one. I mean, let's address, because the playgrounds are in really pretty rough shape. And by the time my grandkids get the benefits of these, they're gonna be in college. So what can you offer?
Sure. I would say the main thing is project management capacity. Playground's not the only type of project that the department is looking to fund. So there's field projects and, you know, court projects and other things. So that's the one thing. The other thing I'll say is those are the top 4 that need a complete reno, but there's the middle of the pack that while we're doing renovations, we'll also be using some funds for hitting those maintenance items that we can take care of so that we get those middle of the pack playgrounds into a better safety zone for playing. So some of those are like Elliott, we're looking at spending some money on to do some upgrades there. Unfortunately, some of those upgrades aren't pretty, but they do take care of the safety issues. The other one's Broadmeadow. So we're sort of doing the big renovation and the middle of the pack upgrades and chipping away at those things to keep those in line until it becomes their turn to
Yeah,
get renovated.
I understand. I'd just suggest that you could accomplish more than one. And if you're more concerned about oversight and coordinating and everything else, I mean, you can always hire a contractor to come in on a specified job and include that cost in the cost of renovating these. And I would really, really support and push for Park and Rec to do that. And last year at town meeting, I stood up and asked I made a motion to shift money into the Park and Rec budget.
Yep,
Primarily
that's how we're
because,
taking care of Elliot. Thank you.
well, I was going to ask, what's happened to that 25,000? And my second question is hopefully you're incorporating that thought process in your operating and maintenance budget for this year's cycle, so that in fact, we have money not only for the existing playgrounds to do that type of maintenance, but also on a going forward basis to cover these new installations that we're putting in place. So
Yes.
to that extent, please comment.
Yep, we did put it into our budget for the FY24. We did request that same money that you put forward on the town meeting floor. And we moved some other money around to sort of beef up that line item for playgrounds. The other thing that the department did is I went out and got my CPSI certification, which is a certified playground safety instructor, so that we could do more inspections and have better maintenance and have more eyes on these playgrounds moving forward. And we'll also at some point, probably within the next year, get our park ranger, send him to that same certification school, so that when he's out and doing the checks and, checking on trash, checking on playgrounds, he'll also know what to flag for us so that we can have a better, quicker response type maintenance program.
Yeah, as I mentioned to your chair, I suggested he just replace the sand in the sandboxes would be an upgrade. So, all right. Thank you very much, Stacy.
Thank you.
So Stacy, just kind of picking up on that last round of questions about maintenance. So maybe I'll approach it in a more simplified way, which is, can you articulate what the what the cumulative increase in the maintenance budget is in your request going from FY 2023 into FY 2024?
Sure.
Is that possible? If it's not, if I'm asking, remember, I'm just a layman, so I don't know. I'm not a finance person. I don't know, but I'm just trying to break it down into a practical question, which is, okay, so if maintenance was identified last year as a serious concern by our committee.
Yes.
What have you done in terms of actually putting the dollar amount on it to address that issue?
So correct me if I'm wrong, you're asking about specifically the budget numbers, not what have we fixed in the
Yes,
playgrounds?
budget.
Okay.
Budget.
So what we've done is there was roughly, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm going to give you just the broad strokes. There was roughly $10,000 in our playground maintenance budget. We also added for FY24 another $25,000 to move forward with the monies that we got from town meeting. The other thing that we've had in the past that we haven't had since COVID is we had a part-time playground person that would go around and check these playgrounds. And there was a line item for that salary too. And so we moved that salary also into the playground maintenance budget so that we could either do the things in-house, or if I needed to hire a contractor to do some of the things. There's a few things that, our department can do, chains, swings, things like that. Then there's like the next level where we can hire somebody like a Tom Forte to come in and do some of the work for us. And then there's the third level where we have to go directly to the vendor and say, can you ship us this piece? And who should we use to install it? So we're beefing that maintenance line item up significantly so we can hit that middle of the pack more and more. Like I sort of mentioned to Rick, is the $25,000 that we got from in FY23, we're almost exclusively going to use it on Elliott safety upgrades. So the 2 playgrounds at Elliott will get a lot of upgrades, but there are some big ticket items that will, you know, cut that down pretty quickly.
Okay. And then are there any, I think you touched on this, but if you could, it sounds like you touched on kind of operational related changes to identify maintenance issues. Okay, so can you just articulate what the operational changes have been or what you plan to do in terms of addressing the issue of maintenance?
Sure. So there's 4 types of playground assessment, so to speak. So there's high frequency and low frequency inspections. High frequency are like your daily or weekly going through, checking on trash. Oh, that chain looks like it's broken. And taking that, those happen on a regular basis on all of our playgrounds. Low frequency are more in depth, but happen less often. So usually if like a teacher calls me and says, the stairs at Broadmeadow look to be tilting in the wrong direction, can you come take a look at it? That would trigger sort of a low frequency inspection where I would go through and do a much more thorough inspection of those playground pieces. An assessment is like we did with Nancy for 2021. You can do them for just one playground, but when I came in, I wanted one done for all. And then a playground audit is sort of like the top tier. And that generally is only done if playground standards are changed or a new playground goes in. That's when you do a playground audit.
All right, just a comment on the side, which is I appreciate Rick encouraging you to put a couple of projects on the board on any fiscal year. I don't want you to walk away from that assuming that that is an endorsement by the committee that we are going to fund a couple of projects annual. Okay, just want to, that's there, we've got scarce resources and we are allocating accordingly. But with that in mind, the sooner you bring to us what your plans are so that we can plug it into our projected CPC financing plan over the next 5 to 8 years, that would be appreciated. And it sounds like you're putting it together. Okay. The so two things, both, I think actually two questions related to need and assessment of need. My daughter is 21 and we didn't go to that Tot Lot. We went to the Dover Tot Lot, which was much nicer. So that was kind of a statement on what, you know, the kind of, and you know, kind of subjective feeling about what the status of the Tot Lot was at the time. So I'm concerned about, you know, if you build it, they will come. Perfect application of that, right?
Yes.
So has there been an assessment of, I mean, it seems to me that there's probably a really big demand for this. We're down to 1 Tot Lot, maybe 2 Tot Lots. So I'm wondering if you thought about that and whether or not it's big enough. Do we have enough capacity?
How many tots do we have?
And so that's one question. And then second, kind of related to that, touching on what Jean said, which was Tot Lots are kind of, you know, almost neighborhood based. I think Perry's at the base of Birds Hill, right? Yes. Okay. So that's, you know, I live on Birds Hill, so you know, you could see it would be a parade from the top of Birds Hill down to the bottom to Perry on a sunny day. And so it is kind of interesting just in terms of planning. It does seem to make logical sense that Tot Lots would be neighborhood based. But if we can't do that, it is what it is. But that's, you know, those are just kind of my observations. So I know that's probably not anything for you to comment on, but now it goes back to a particular bee in my bonnet, which is the tie and bond survey, which was, we actually put effort into open space and through a survey process. We had a hearing, we had a public hearing. I filled out a survey and Now it appears that we're never going to do anything with that draft document, which is now probably 5 or plus years old. And is it that we're going to basically come up with a needs assessment through this working group and the public hearing, and whoever comes in and voices their concern is actually, that's how we're going to come up with a plan for what we're going to do with our open space, as opposed to maybe a more a data-driven analysis, like a formal survey. So it sounds like survey is out the window, right? We're going to have a public hearing, people are going to show up, and somehow or another we're going to come up with what our plan is. That, I don't mean to be dismissive, but is that really what the approach is going to be?
So are you referring to the open space and recreation plan versus this active recreation group?
Yes.
Okay, so let me address the
apples and oranges. Sorry about
Sure.
that.
No, let me address the OSRP. So when I got here, the OSRP was already sort of 5 years old at the end of the tie and bond project. And we agreed to leave it in draft form. It is going to come back up. One of the things I'm considering is requesting a warrant article to bring that back to the table for FY25 so that we can get a full and complete OSRP. So that's question one, I think. As far as the active recreation group, this sort of came about because there's 3 very passionate groups that were coming to us. So the skate park, the pickleballers, and the off-leash dog folks. Those are the top 3. There's some other ones that we're inviting to this group too. So we're trying to look at, like, if we're interested, the town finds the needs of a skate park to be pertinent in our town, where can we put it? Like, we can't stick it on a small little area. We can't put it tucked in anywhere. You know, we also have to factor in parking. Like, who will be using it? Who will be parking there? Accessibility, all those things. So that's where this group sort of came out. So now we're inviting all user groups to see what are the needs / wants of facilities in town. And if we think that they're a priority, where can we put them? So not only will we be looking at projects, we'll be looking at parcels to see if we can fit X project in Y parcel.
So, but how does that fit in with continuing and updating the tie and bond open space? Am I mixing? Maybe I don't understand how the two interrelate.
So the open space and recreation plan is much more data driven. It's much more thorough. This is like a working group for 6 months to look at some major projects that the town has been mulling over for years. I mean, the skate park has come on and off the docket with the commission for 20 plus years. Pickleball, obviously there's an insurgence of pickleball and whether or not we can add courts. And there's been a lot of vocal resonance about dog parks. So this came about with a joint meeting with the select board. The select board and the Park and Rec Commission together decided to create this working group to try and get all of the passionate folks involved in seeing what we can prioritize and when and where. I think it's separate completely from the OSRP. That's much more data driven. It's much more, there's a lot more information about open space versus recreation facilities.
But I don't mean to keep picking at this, but is it your hope that then whatever decisions you make on this working group somehow or another fit with what the open space and rec plan ultimately ends up being? Or aren't you kind of making decisions that could impact the open space and rec plan? I'll let it go, but it's, maybe I'm missing the point. I'll let it go. If I'm not, I'll. Okay. All right. So sorry about that. I didn't mean to belabor that. I do apologize. All right. Those are all my questions. And now we'll just kind of do a lightning round. Everybody raises their hand. And so Jean is next to me and she's live, so she gets to ask the question first.
Yeah, I keep focusing on use, on who's going to use this Tot Lot when it's all fixed up. And it occurs to me that I see, well, for example, at the pool in the summer, daycare centers bring children in vans with their, the people that supervise them to use the pool. Do you think it's likely that daycare centers with little kids through the year would bring kids to use this facility? Or, I mean, they've all got their own little tot lots associated with their daycare centers, I'm sure. But I'm just envisioning who is actually going to drive there and use the facility, you know? Do you think daycares will use it?
Sure. I mean, once we build a playground, it's sort of open to everyone. They're not monitored. Not only do I think the daycares will, but people out of town will certainly come and drive. Perfect example, Peter went to Dover to bring his kids so there's communities around us that might come to us for use. But what I envision is most of the use will be during the day, like the morning and early afternoon hours, as opposed to the late afternoon and evening hours, just because of the age of the kids that will be using the equipment.
Okay, I just want to make sure this wonderful facility that we're going to be spending this money on is actually going to be used. When it was new 20 years ago, I know you weren't here, Stacy, but did it get a lot of use?
Yes, it did. It got a lot of use. And like I said, it was on like the top 10 lists, even as early as 5 years ago, as a destination playground for parents with toddlers.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, you said that before. Thank you. Okay.
Reg Foster.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. So I have two follow-up questions, although I must say, I'm looking forward to the first pickleball application here. If I'm still on the CPC. I mean, I read so much about it in the New York Times, but that's just a side comment. So I want to pick up on two themes that have been brought up by other members here. One was Peter Pingatore, our chair, on the maintenance here, because I too, when you said it, and you just said it again, picked up on your comment about the ugly playgrounds, and how this playground, as recently as 5 or 10 years ago, was on the who's list of great tot lots, and then you said, and because of lack of maintenance, it's not on there anymore. And I would welcome you, the Parks and Rec Commission or the department, to kind of answer. This is going to be a little bit of a complicated question. I'll put it in writing tomorrow, but how much of what is needed today with this playground is due to, I'll call it, standards have changed. It was first built in the 60s, early 70s, and then major renovation in 1992, and here we are today. I mean, we in the 60s, early 70s, I would have been playing maybe in that playground myself, pretty close. And we all know that the standards have changed for safeties, for example, compared to what it used to be. And then secondly, how much is it due to, I'll call it, conceptual principles have changed about what constitutes a good playground, what is the way, good play is done here. And how much of it, of the need today for the $200,000 to $400,000 is due to lack, what you said, lack of maintenance. And I'm very impressed that your budget was $10K last year and has been, increased by 2.5 times this year to 25K. But then I just did the math, and that's $555 per playground of the 18 playgrounds per year last year, and presumably on starvation maintenance prior to that is what I took your comment to be. And you're the new kid on the block, so you can sort of say that very clearly to all of us, having joined us, in 2020 or 2021, right?
Correct.
And today, with our 2.5 times increase, still $1,389 per playground per month. And so you're in the position per year, and you're in the position of saying, well, we got to take all of it and focus it on our worst ugly playground, because spreading it out that thin doesn't maintain things. And then the fourth part of it is, stuff does wear out, so you can maintain it all you want. And at the end of the day, it's just going to wear out and fall apart. And that's, what you got to do. You got to, do a $400,000 improvement. So I warned that was kind of a complicated question. Not don't have to answer it off the top of your head tonight, but I would be interested in that. And then the other thing I wanted to build off of is again Peter's comment about I think it was yours no, maybe it was Gene. Only one Tot Lot in the entire town. We have 5 elementary schools because the theory is that you should have something in your local community for kids of that age. And if members of this commission are taking their kids to Dover, part of it is just you want to have something that's just 5 minutes away from where you live. And when you got to get the kids out there and getting some exercise and some fresh air. So I'd be interested in knowing what the thinking is there from a long range planning point of view. And those are my 2 questions, follow-on questions.
All right. Reg, I'm going to start with the second question because that seems much easier than the first one. So I apologize for not being clear. DeFazio Tot Lot is the only Tot Lot specific. So Perry Park has multiple age groups, so it does have equipment for both 2 to 5 and 5 to 12. Greens Playground the same, Newman Playground the same. Sonita has both. Even Cricket, which is a much smaller playground, does have pieces for 2 to 5 and 5 to 12. So in all of our neighborhoods, we do have options for all these playgrounds have options for 2 to 5. DeFazio is the only one that is only 2 to 5 and doesn't have bigger kids running around. Which makes it, those are the types of playgrounds that tend to hit those who's who lists for toddlers. Because when you've got a whole bunch of kids of different ages running around, there's a lot of collisions. And there's less so with a specific Tot Lot. I think if you can, as you were asking your first question, I had a lot of answers for you. And then as you got to the end, I forgot them all. So if you, I'd be happy to answer the question in the follow-up, questionnaire that you gave me.
That would be great.
And you want to email it to me, I'll add that in.
I'll be sending it to Cecilia and she'll
Perfect.
package it up with everybody else's.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not sure who was next. It may have been Laura, so we'll go with Laura and then Joe Barnes. Laura?
Yes, thank you. I have I think just a quick question. Is there ever, so I used to live in Newton and there were, obviously it's a city, it's much different, but there were, parks like this. And I remember where I lived, there's a park down at the end of the street and a bunch of the neighbors approached Park and Rec and said, we want to support this, we'll actually raise money to do this. And I know that there are also sometimes in different places besides the neighborhood contributions, sometimes other people or local companies would want to support these things because maybe they could get their little plaque with their name on it somewhere. So I'm just wondering, is that ever considered, those types of things and I know it's kind of awkward for you to ask neighbors, but are those outlets ever considered for another source of funding?
Yeah, so fundraising is always an option for all of our projects. We do look at that as an option. We tend to do fundraising campaigns as opposed to like just asking for donations.
Yeah.
I don't know that any of our playgrounds in the past have been subsidized by a company. It is something that other communities are going to because, you know, just like the cost of everything else, it's going up.
Right.
So, you know, I would also obviously defer to the commission and see how their feelings about that, sort of naming rights on a playground or donated by type things, but it is something
like
we
in
would
honor
certainly
of.
discuss.
Or like in memory of, I see that sometimes, you know, you have a nice
Yes.
bench and it has, yeah. So that, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we would certainly keep that as part of an option for the projects.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, next up is Joe Barnes and then Rick Zimbo. Joe?
Okay, thank you. Stacy, the playgrounds are only a small part of the responsibility that the Park and Recreation have. There are a lot of other responsibilities also and jurisdiction. Does Park and Rec have a maintenance person identified as the one who would address repairs and needs of the playgrounds, for example? Or do you have to outsource requests to DPW or to forestry department or something like that? Do you have someone that's delegated for that purpose alone?
We don't have anybody delegated. Part of the park ranger that we have now, who handles our fields and facilities, we will in the future get him certified as a CPSI, so that will be part of his job. With playground maintenance, some things I can outsource to DPW. Most of it goes to an outside contractor, if not the vendor directly. I'm not saying you won't see me laying under a zebra trying to fix the bolts to tighten things up, because you will see that, but we don't have a dedicated person currently in the department.
Has that delayed repairs in the past that would be a consideration for going forward as well?
It can delay repairs, certainly. You know, we had at Elliott, we had a chain that was supposed to be bound at both ends that came off on one end, so the kids were using it like nunchucks. So we had to send somebody out there from DPW and just like cut it down for safety reasons. Thankfully, they were available that day, but you know, if they weren't, then it could have been me out there, or I would have had to call the contractor. So some things can be delayed. Other times I do wish we had a park maintenance person on staff so that we could get them out there right away. Having Wu as the park ranger has been a significant help, but he's just one person that works 40 hours a week. And as you know, our facilities are open much more than that.
Yep. Okay. Food for thought. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any other questions? No? Okay, Rick Zimbo.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Stacy, I know I'm harping on probably beating up a dead horse here, but
I
when we
appreciate
went
your
through
passion.
we went through this at town meeting last year, and we suggested $25,000, and we adjusted the line item on the budget by that 25,000. We were able to convince town meeting. And at the time, I think I mentioned that $25,000 was not enough, and this gets to Reg's point. And quite honestly, $25,000 from a strategic perspective was probably the most we were going to get out of town meeting that night, because there were a lot of people there that, first of all, didn't understand how to make a budget transfer during the operating budget, and secondly, there was a lot of opposition from the finance committee on doing this. I guess I'm also sensing that there was a lot of opposition by town management on, you know, holding the budget for your department down. And I mean, I want to make sure that there's a lot of people out there that support the work that you're doing, and we recognize we're all under tight physical constraints. But on the same token, I think that there's a lot of things in town that we just tend to let go, and because we don't have the money to spend on them. And what it does is it costs us money over the long term, because as we've been through this, time and again. I mean, the tennis court's another example that, stuff just tends to deteriorate. And what do? You don't maintain it. You wind up rebuilding it.
Mhm.
Same thing happens in the school systems where you put in a brand new HVAC system and that the HVAC system is not maintained properly, starts to fail. And next thing you know, we've got to replace things or, so we have a tendency in town to spend money on capital and we don't maintain the stuff. And I really want to encourage you, particularly as you're coming forward, looking for money to spend on this, to really make sure that that you're getting a little pushback from, at least myself on this committee, and I'm sure others might feel the same way, that we have to maintain this stuff if we're going to be putting this in place. And so that's where I think it's important to identify what's the maintenance cost associated with this going through time and make sure we have incorporated that into the budget. That's my soapbox for the night, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. I will say that for all the new projects that we're bringing forward, part of the design funds we are asking the designers to incorporate what the projected maintenance costs over a 5, 10, 15-year period, depending on the project. And we are creating robust maintenance plans for playgrounds, tennis courts, basketball courts, which seem like not a big deal, but if you let them go too long, they become a big deal. The pool, sort of all of our facilities, and going back to our facilities that aren't getting upgraded right now, to create a maintenance plan, to get in there, to find out what we can do to sort of get to that next level for all of our facilities. So I agree with you 100%. Often, it used to be set it and forget it, and we can't afford to do that right now. We have to set it, come up with a plan, stick to it, and make sure that we're checking on these things regularly.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Sid.
Okay, I just have two comments. One is, I didn't say this at the time, so I just want to emphasize, I'm glad to see that you're circling back to the tie and bond survey, because there was a significant amount of work done in that. So let's make that, it'd be nice to complete that. So
Agree.
thank you for picking up on that. The next thing is, this is, so just, I don't mean to blindside you, but I'll say it in terms of schedule. We have a public hearing scheduled for March 16th, and we had planned to actually present the amendment to the community preservation plan at that hearing. And so what we're waiting for is from a number of the stakeholders to make their contributions to any proposed amendments to the plan. And just to make it easier, so we're waiting for a number of people, including Park and Rec. But just to make it easier, with this committee, you could see they pay a lot of people paying a lot of attention to detail. But what you don't know is we have a bunch of wordsmithers here too, like Gene McKnight and Joe Barnes. These are professional wordsmithers, and Professor Dermody, and then me. So whatever, you can give it to us in bullet format, and Gene will bring the magic. Okay, she will bring the magic. Okay, so bullet format, Gene guarantees she'll bring the magic. All right.
Perfect.
So
Will do.
Okay, good. And the same goes to Dave. Same goes with open space and Concom. Okay, bullet format will bring the magic. All right. Okay, as soon as possible. All right.
Will do. Thank you.
Good. Thanks so much, Stacy. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks very much. Have a good night.
All right.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thanks. Okay. All right, so now let's go through our just quick updates. We've already addressed Claxton, and so now we're at FY 2024 01 and 02. We can discuss those together. Those are the applications by the Needham Housing Authority. And so let's call on Rick, Bob, and Laura to give us an update. Whoever wants to go first can go first. You guys decide.
Rick, you want to lead us off?
Sure. In your packet, I believe you had the initial responses to the questions. I think that came out. We met with the Housing Authority, their consultants, this past week on an initial kickoff meeting. And it was a very, very good meeting. I'd have to say it helped us in understanding the projects a little bit more in depth. And we also had some supplemental questions that we posed, and Reg and company have already provided some responses to that. Reg was kind enough to send along some notes of the meeting. And it's interesting on some of the changes in the projects as we look forward, some of the ultimate funding sources for the Linden Chambers redevelopment. And they're going to talk about that when they come forward to the committee. I think that's on February 8th is the scheduled presentation. And they're working on a PowerPoint for that presentation. And we're going to meet with them next week to kind of go through the PowerPoint and talk about some of the aspects of the project that we felt was important to. I mean, these are very complex projects. And so we felt it would be important to simplify it a little bit in preparation as we go forward with the public meeting and with the town meeting. So that's kind of a 30,000 foot summary level of the project. So I don't know if Bob and Laura, you want to add anything, or even Reg?
Laura, do you have anything?
No, I mean, I unfortunately was not able to be on the full meeting on Monday, but you know, there were questions that were answered that were of a more overall type of nature, and then there were some very specific questions asked, and you know, we're getting all the information we need. Reg has been great. I feel like we have, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Rick and Bob, but I feel like we have enough information with which to make a really good decision and recommendation. I mean, there's no shortage of information for us. And having the meeting the other night just clarified, you know, some of the questions and made succinct some of the information that we were provided. So I think we're on the right track.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on Rick and Laura. Yeah, and that is one of the challenges, is the amount of information.
Right.
And learning it and making it clear amongst our committee. And we're already, you know, predicting, as we do with a lot of projects, you know, how do we present this clearly to the townspeople at town meeting? Because it's a complicated project. And I think it's part of our job as the committee is to distill that for town meeting consumption. So, and the people we met with were wonderful, giving us lots of good answers. I mean, they know their stuff. So that was very helpful to put that in. In fact, we're having yet another meeting with them, just our liaison group. So moving forward.
Okay, so just from I haven't had an opportunity to look at the information. So is it digestible in its present format? I mean, you know, you'd spend a lot of time with it, but does it work? Is it readable?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely. I think it's really, I guess the best way to categorize it, Peter, is there's a complexity to the information and the whole project that where it's really challenging is trying to distill that complexity down so that a layperson, someone who doesn't have intimate knowledge of what's going on and how it's happening. And I mean, as one of the folks at the meeting said, this is like inside baseball to housing authority stuff. And that, as she started to explain it, it became much clearer for the fans who are sitting in the stadium. They don't need to know the inside of the baseball. They just need to know how it's working and what's going on and things like that. And I thought this meeting accomplished that, and it's going to even be further broken down and distilled. Just to give you an example, and we'll keep it real simple, but the Linden Chambers Development Project is a state-funded project. And one of the changes that the Housing Authority and their consultants are making is they're going to shift the initial, I believe it's 60 units, and it's going to be federally funded. So very similar to the way Cooks and Seabeds are funded now. Instead of being state funded, it'll be federally funded. And there's a long explanation as to the hows, the whys, the wherefores that is extremely complex. And they were very gracious and walked us through it and answered the questions. And I think we left there with a true understanding of what they were doing and how they were doing it and where it goes from there. And so I think that's the more, from my perspective anyways, and I don't know if Bob and Laura share this, but that's the more complicated one for us to deal with. The easier one, quite honestly, is going to be Cooks and Seabed. And that one, all they're requesting there, it's real simple. They're requesting, this one request for $250,000 is 20% of the pre-development cost. There'll be no further request on this project from us. So it's real simple, you know. Is that eligible? Do we want to fund the $250,000? I mean, that's really the nuts and bolts of it. That's not going to be a heavy lift to understand. So I think that's basically the best way to describe it.
I think the challenge is going to be just to pile on to what, not pile on, but to add on to the other comments. How do we get this information we want to do the diligence, we have to do the research, but there's just so much. So how do we take the salient points out of all of this data and put it in a format that, as I think Bob might have said, us, all of you and us can understand. You know, that's our challenge right now, is it's just a lot of information. But Reg has been great. The consultants were great. It's just a lot. I mean, that's really all I can say at this point. And, you know, you could understand the concept of it, but to be fair to the process, we also have to, you know, give it the diligence and understand a little bit more detail than just, oh, they need money to fix all of this deferred maintenance in these projects. And I think the leverage that Reg always alludes to, you know, the ability to leverage 250 or whatever, when he's getting all this other funding from different resources, is a really important piece to this, because it's a means to an end that's funded by somebody else, really.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Rich, do you have anything to add?
Well, yeah, I do, of course. But it's gonna be,
You had to ask.
We're adjourning. We're no later than 7:30.
no, I promise it won't be long. So we did a little bit of a postmortem, or afterwards, and where everybody agreed what was helpful about what we did is what we found out. What was obvious to us is not necessarily obvious to Laura and Rick, and
well, maybe Rick.
yeah, well, no, I really mean that. It was very helpful to understand that, because of course we're deep in the weeds of this sort of stuff and we don't see it. And secondly is we talked, I think, a lot about how to, however Rick said it, how to boil it down to the Reader's Digest version so it's understandable to the ordinary mortal. And so that gave us some really good ideas on that. We do have a second meeting scheduled, and we decided that let's work on to see the draft presentation that we'll be bringing into the full CPC meeting on the 8th. And that will help us further. We got a lot of good help on that, and we'll see how test it out on the 3 liaisons before we get to the full committee. And of course, this is really the test, like Rick says, for the full town meeting, which is even another level there. Not to mention the finance committee, which is another intermediate stop, and the select board. And then Next one was just, real big interest, as always, in this committee is on the 5-year look ahead. That was what Rick was just alluding to. Just sent that out this afternoon. And what is the overall preservation redevelopment initiative look like from a 5-year look ahead point of view in terms of potential requests for CPA funding versus how much outside funding, as Laura said, is being leveraged. So that update has been sent to Cecilia and the liaisons to kind of work on and understand at our next meeting. And then the fifth thing that Rick mentioned is we may have some conflicts for the 15th meeting, the February 15th meeting. And certainly the Linden Chambers project is the more complex of the two projects. We had Seabeds and Cook going on the 8th and Linden Chambers on the 15th. So from our team is got requests for guidance on how to prepare for and time the two projects that we need to go through. Are we still doing it the same way on the 8th and the 15th, or is there something different?
Right. That's how we get scheduled. Right?
Yeah.
But is there, Reg, you saying you'd like to flip that, or what is it that, is there, I think
I
that,
don't think the concern was which one went first. I think the concern was we had decided to put them on 2 different nights because it would be a lot of information for one night.
Right.
But we have liaisons who are gonna be out of the country.
okay, so that Rick is going to be out of the country, but he's available.
Yeah, but Laura's not. She's out of the country as well.
I'm in
Okay, so let's,
time zone.
okay,
But you
hold
know
on.
what? They can do it. You guys don't need me for that.
Wait. So if we do, are you saying that perhaps, well, let's see, Laura is out, excuse me, I wrote this down. Laura's out on the beginning of the 14th. So you're saying that we could put the more complicated, the Linden, this is this is a question for the 4 of you. Are you saying it would work, it would be better if is the next meeting, is it on the 1st? Was the first presentation?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that correct? Okay.
I think it's the 8th is the first presentation, Peter.
Sorry, yes. So are you saying that if 2/8, the 3 liaisons are going to be here and available?
Yep.
And then the next question is, well, Reg, are you, and is that going to be enough time? Because this is Linden Chambers is a complicated presentation. Do you have enough time? Well, we have enough time. We have a couple of weeks to digest what you sent us. Do you have enough time to put together the presentation and meet again? And do you feel comfortable with that? If Reg is kind of indirectly asking that question, let's open that up for discussion. Okay, so discussion. You guys tell me what you think. It's really up to the 4 of you, I think.
So we can do it either way. We'll be ready on the 8th with Linden Chambers if we decide to flip the 2 projects that way.
And that gives Laura an opportunity to be here. Laura's not pushing very hard and saying we can handle it without her, but it's still.
Just trying to be flexible. And there's so many competent people. There's a lot of people.
I would just want to say that Laura has the banking background, in her day job, and I would encourage her to be there for Linden Chambers.
So maybe can we switch them then?
I said it's up to you guys. If you folks think it's a good
I don't
idea,
mind.
that sounds like a good idea. And then Rick, when are you going to be out of country are you going to be here on the 8th?
I am. I'm leaving the morning of the 15th.
Okay, so, and that's good. So let's flip the 2. That way you'll be here, Laura will be here, you'll be here not distracted, and Laura will be here. I think it really makes sense to do that. And then on the 15th, if you can, you're right. I mean, I think we see where things are going on Seabeds and Captain Robert Cook. So even if something happened and you weren't available, it wouldn't be a lost evening. You would do a good job.
Yeah, I think the 15th, Peter, I mean, Seabrook, the Seabeds Cook project is really, it boils down to, it's all developmental costs. We've gone through and we've drilled down on what those development costs are. I mean, there may be, some adjustments to those numbers, but for right now, it's fairly straightforward. Does it qualify for CPA money? And do we want to spend $250,000 on development costs, or do we want to wait and spend it on hard costs? I mean, that's, kind of where we are, and we need to have that discussion. That's all.
All right, we had a hand up. Good, thank you. Hand up by Jean McKnight.
I'm very glad this flipped, because as it turns out, I cannot come to the 15th, to the meeting on February 15th. Not only will I be in Puerto Rico, but it's actually my birthday, and friends are going to
You
celebrate.
don't want to celebrate with us.
No, I'm
Well,
sorry.
that's Gene.
Happy
Plans have
birthday.
been made. I won't be able to come on.
All right, so that seals it. Okay, no, seriously, we need.
Yeah,
we
no,
need
I'm very
everything.
interested in this.
Okay. Okay, so there you go.
Question?
Revise our schedule, hand up, Reg Foster.
So will we have a quorum on the 15th?
Oh, yeah, because Jean won't be here. No, it's Jean, yeah, Jean will not be here, but everyone else should be here. Rick might, Jean won't be here, Laura won't be here.
Rick won't be.
Even if Rick is not here, we still won't. Okay, we have
Yeah,
five.
I'm a maybe.
Yeah, okay, we have five. We're fine.
And I'm going to say one more comment on Bob's behalf, but a lot of what a lot of what we are going to be doing in Seabeds and Cook has to do with architecting and engineering here. That's what we're asking for in pre-development. So, I think he can maybe represent the views of the other two liaisons here.
Okay, good. So, all right, so now let's just to affirm, so on the 8th, we'll go with Lyndon Chambers, and on the 15th, we'll have a presentation on Seabeds and Cook. Okay.
And I'm happy to, I'm sorry, haven't raised my hand. It's Laura. I'm happy to send, any questions or notes or comments, if that's helpful, ahead of time to Cecilia. I don't know, for the 15th.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
All right, good, that's right. Okay. All right, so, all right, thank you, Brent. But first, thank you, all four of you, for putting such time and effort into this. These are really important applications, so thank you, all four of you. All right. Let's see. I don't know that we have any follow-up on due diligence questions. They're out there. We're getting our information. Updates on CPA plan. And I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, this is always the wrong thing when you start pointing people out. Just want to acknowledge that both Rick and Reg played a significant role in revisions to the draft revisions to the CPA plan. I don't know that I mentioned that. So just everybody's been working hard on it. So I didn't mention that before in terms of wordsmithing.
I have a question about the plan, which is the latest one.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
just go up on the screen, and then I think this is just more, we don't need to, I want to give you thematically what it is. We don't need to go through each. What I did was, I took the latest draft that I had circulated with you folks, and I had accepted the changes. And then I did a red line from that, okay? And I'll give you the broad scope is that the 3 points that I'd like to make. One is I rearranged some things because I realized in giving it a read through in pages 1 through 13, I realized that some things were duplicative. So I tried to merge some paragraphs and still keep the voice of the various drafters in this amendment, okay? I inserted back in a couple of things that Reg had suggested in his margin notes in the prior draft. And so you'll see those. And one thing that I would say is that what I wanted to make clear in the body was the language, particular language of the statute in terms of what it is that we fund in those three areas, the four areas, and with emphasis on the actual language of the statute. And then I made changes to the glossary, and I added I added some additional definitions, and I thought it was fair to the, you know, the reading public and to the process. So you'll see that, you know, the things that we always talk about, you know, what is maintenance? What is capital improvement? What is rehabilitation? And what is preservation? Those are all defined terms under the statute. And rather than force us or any you know, layperson reading the plan to go to the statute, I included those in the glossary, because if you think about it, we could just, if you look at those are the 4 questions that we always noodle through, 4 definitions that we always noodle through in dealing with eligibility. So I include them in the glossary. And I'll tell you that the language of the glossary language tracks the statute. One thing I want to do is add in a little footnote that says that the glossary tracks the language of the statute, and there are additional definitions that you can find in the statute, you know, just so everybody knows that. But I put in the big ones right there. You can see maintenance and preservation. You know, those are kind of questions that we always have, and also support of community housing, which is also one that is kind of it's top of mind, right? It's one of those things that's being discussed. So let's put the definition in there that tracks the language of the statute. Okay, so those are kind of the broad themes, and I would just encourage you to give it a read through. And like I said, I think it's in pretty good shape. And if you have any comments, send them to Cecilia, and then we'll accept the changes. And then hopefully we're going to have some other things from the other stakeholders, and we'll be able to push the process along. So I actually, after reading it through and spending a couple of hours or a few hours with it and a few hours with the statute, I realized that we got a nice plan. The cumulative work has been really effective. So not that I'm not tooting my own horn, just saying the committee's done a good job. So that's kind of, so read it through, send your comments to Cecilia, and we'll turn around another draft for our next meeting. Okay. All right. So questions from the committee.
Yes. What was attached to Cecilia, to your email today, was I think this one that said amended April 2022. It doesn't have any redlining.
So you have to go, and when it sends, it automatically defaults to showing you a clean version. You have to go into a view.
All right, so let's show everyone this, because we kept
Yeah.
struggling with this. I
Yeah.
kept sending it over again, you know, so it's like, no,
When I
not this
send
one,
it,
that one.
And you
so-
open it, it automatically shows this, and there's a red line, but that's not a helpful red line. So you have to go into the document and hit review.
Hit review.
And then up here, there's a simple markup, and if you do all markup, it does that. I had it saved like this when I sent it the second time, and it still apparently did it, so.
Okay, so just remember that, so you can reveal the red lines by doing
Okay,
that.
but what I then printed out is the current version, the clean current version, right?
Yeah, so it
Okay.
has all the corrections, it just doesn't indicate where they are.
Yes.
And also there's some formatting issue that I didn't, you know, because I didn't create a clean version and look at it, and clean it up. I just did
Oh,
the
sure,
red
I
lines,
understand.
okay?
Okay.
But then,
And
yeah,
then-
you can work with that, Gene. and do
Okay.
your wordsmith.
April 20, well, little things like, shouldn't it be April 2023? Like this prior
I
version?
thought I finally changed that. No, I guess I didn't. Okay, there you go.
Because I was confused. This one that was distributed in September says February 1st, 2023, and then this is April 2022.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll get, okay.
Before we
right.
finalize it, I'll update the date.
I'll try to do
format
the
and stuff.
review
And then-
function and find the red line. Thank you.
And Cecilia's actually plugged in some of the links to the data points that we want, you know, links to data that we want. Okay, so we have several hands up. First one is, let's just go with Rick from the top down. So Rick and then Laura. Rick first.
Well, thank you. Could you scroll down on that to the listing of the committee members?
I think it's at the end.
Yeah. Oops, you went by it right there. Okay, for some reason, the edits didn't come through on mine. So that looks like it's correct. Except Bob Dermody is no longer on the committee, June 22nd.
Look up at the top.
The vice chair.
Yeah, but he's got the wrong date.
Oh, well, then see you, everybody.
Okay, so
We'll
we'll,
have to fix
all right, that's
that.
good. So that's
Thank you, Rick.
just, you know. if
Not a
you-
problem.
Just little nits and gnats like that you pick up on, it would be
Yeah,
helpful.
this didn't come through. All the changes didn't come through on mine. So that's why I asked you to scroll down. So,
Or mine,
Okay.
Cecilia, even when I did your review, show all markup.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I'll show you in a second.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's next hand up. All right, so let's get that. So we're all dealing with the same document in a red line format. It's just whatever we need to do to make that happen.
thanks, guys.
Mine's now frozen, so.
Okay, all right, so maybe if you have to resend, we'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Laura and then Reg. Laura?
Hi, so I have a document, that's official, and it's like a PDF of, you know, what things can be used for, and I can, you know, I don't know if it's helpful, but I was wondering if I should send it to Celia, maybe as an appendix. It's very clear about the definitions and the Mass General laws, and it's just a one-page PowerPoint. I don't know if that's helpful or not. If you
Oh,
think,
that's from the CPA. I mean, that's from the Community Preservation Alliance.
yeah,
I don't know, we circulate that among our committee. I mean, I don't know that we need, well, you can send it along. I don't know that it's,
okay, if you don't think it's relevant. The other thing I just wanted to ask is, Cecilia, I went on the website just looking for, I was looking for, in terms of the housing requests, the prior requests and the minutes and the agendas to certain meetings and what projects were approved. And the projects approved only go up to 2021. And I'm wondering,
Yes, there's a weird thing where I think it's like correct in one spot and incorrect in, or out of date in another, excuse me. So
Okay.
I'm trying to search through and fix it. I can't. It's
Okay.
linked to like 6 different spots. I'm trying to find them all.
yeah, so
Okay.
all right, so
Yeah.
we put
Thank
that,
you.
I put those links and the request for data on Cecilia's, plate, so she'll be working on that. But that's good, Laura, to bring that up. Okay. All right, any other comments, Laura?
no, all set. Thank you so much.
Okay, Reg Foster.
So having done a lot of red lines over the years, I would make a couple of suggestions that I think, as much as I hate to suggest sending out one final last version after the 3 we received today, I don't care anything about tracking changes on formatting at all. I don't want to know the history of formatting. And I would suggest there's a way of accepting all the formatting changes, and it makes them all go away, and it reduces the clutter dramatically. And then secondly, the first thing I did when I received the draft earlier today was to look through all the changes that Cecilia made versus the ones, Peter, that you did on your edit. And I couldn't find all the ones that Cecilia were corrections, typos. There was no, nothing of quote unquote substance. I mean, very important changes by Cecilia. And I would, I can do this for myself, but I think it would be very helpful for everybody if we just accepted all of Cecilia's changes as well. So all we're looking at is the substantive changes since the last draft. And then I would save that in this very long, complicated file name. I would correct the date the way it was suggested, and just reissue it as today's, the 125 draft with Peter's changes, and then we're going to go forward from there. And I think
I didn't actually know that you could accept just formatting changes, so I
Yeah,
learned
you can.
something
No,
new
it
today. So
wasn't.
thank you.
What
You
do
can.
is you actually don't redline format, so you click
Yeah.
off the
no,
box.
wrong. You can set it up, and I'll show you that tomorrow, Cecilia, where
Yeah,
you
I
just
can dig it
accept
up.
formatted changes, and they all go away, and all you're left is the substantive changes.
Yeah, I'll click around tomorrow, and if I can't figure it out, I'll give you a call.
Yeah.
I thought about that, turning it off after I did all of them, and I was like, I'm not undoing all of them.
No,
Okay.
just one click, and they're all gone. I changed the font from this to that.
Okay. All right, good. we will clean that up and we'll do one more. Okay, Jean, handout.
Yeah, as far as sending in edits, should we, at this point, be working from the clean version that was sent out?
All right, so what,
Is that what we
Reg
should be
Reg had a
looking-
plan. I like his plan, which is he said, let's just send out one last one
Yeah,
with the red line.
I got,
Or,
I got another suggestion.
okay, wait, all right, so Dave, well, let's hear from you, because we haven't heard from you
Yeah,
yet.
you know, like Reg, I've worked with a lot of red lines and sometimes it's useful to take the red line after you've scrubbed out the formatting changes and make a PDF of that. And then send that along with the clean copy. So that people could look at the red line,
That's very helpful, by the
people
way.
could look at the red line to be no confusion.
And that's why you will ensure that people can see the red line.
yeah,
Right.
So create a PDF of the red line and a clean version.
perfect.
Okay.
And
I
the
can do
clean copy,
Clean,
you can accept
accept
all
all
the changes.
changes.
And then people could make any further changes.
That's what we
Okay,
easier.
so
I
then we'll
think.
do, and so
Yeah.
Jean, you'll work with a Word document. It'll be an organic document that will have accepted all the changes, but you'll have a second document that shows
To
the
look
red
at,
line.
yeah.
Okay, good.
That's-
I agree
everybody?
with Dave 100%. Yeah, a
Yes.
clean red line and a clean Word doc.
Yep,
Yes,
I'll do that.
okay, good.
Mhm.
Okay, that's great. All right, I think that's it for the agenda for this evening.
I have a quick question about due diligence questions. I had said at a prior meeting that with regard to the, particularly the DeFazio project, that we should ask about use. And I asked that question today. Now I understand better the nature of the project and I had not followed through on my promise to come up with a due diligence question on who is expected to use this facility. Should I just let that go at this point?
Sure. I mean, I don't think it's, I think if you got, it's not, yeah, you're right. I'd like to say, let's put it in writing so it's out there. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, Reg's question is pretty complicated. That makes sense to put it in writing. Rick often has questions that follow-up questions. He likes to listen to the presentation and then he has a follow-up question in writing. But this is, we addressed that, that's fine.
Yeah,
It's not a burden.
we
Yeah.
addressed it in the presentation for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, so, all right, so then let's have a, let's see, I think that, Joe, you back on? You're good. Joe, your hand is up.
Yes, it is. I have a scheduling issue, which maybe you and I should have a sidebar rather than take up time here, but I'm going to be out of state from about the 26th of February through the 16th or 17th of March. Some of it can be done, I think, the Claxton project, some of it can be done through Zoom. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be available for the 15th of March. I'll be on the road. We're traveling and it's by automobile. So you and I should probably talk about that.
Good. We'll talk
Sounds
off.
like we may have a quorum issue on the
No,
15th then.
he's
No,
talking about
15th of March.
He's in, now
Oh,
he's in
it's
the
in
March.
March.
We're okay. Let's have a little conversation.
Okay.
I'll send you an email. We can set up a time to talk.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, let's see. Any other issues? All right, hearing none, let's have a motion to adjourn. I'll make the motion that we adjourn the meeting. Second.
Second.
Okay, let's have a second is by, we'll give it to Dave. Dave.
We'll
here.
take half.
Okay. All right, roll call vote. Joe Barnes,
Yes.
Bob Dermody,
Yes.
Laura Dorfman,
Yes.
Rich Foster,
Yes.
Dina Hannigan.
I think she signed off.
Oh, Dina, okay, good. Dave Harrod,
Yes.
Gene McKnight,
Yes.
Rick Zimbo,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, thanks very much. Good night.
Thank you, folks. Stay safe.
All right. Well done.